What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association, and I host the only online conversation in the world for dads and fathers that is sponsored by Dove Men Care and Dad Central, which is Canada's national fatherhood organization. And as part of that collaboration last year, I was part of a team that reached out to 100,000 fathers and dads, over 100,000 fathers and dads directly and indirectly. And as always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And we're broadcasting Jan 20th. It is cold here in Toronto. I mean, cold. Like Monday, we got 16 inches of snow. Now it's like it's going down like minus 16 tonight. So we're getting the full force of winter, but we're all right. Because you know what? We've got another new friend to share with the Dr. Vibe Show family community. So let me give a little background before we bring this outstanding lady to the digital platform. Micaela S. Benn is the author of Little Mr. Fix-It Assets with the To-Do List. It's an illustrated picture book for children ages 3 to 8 years old. This book, as well as those to follow in the series, centers on the relationship dynamics between family members and provides enrichment resources to support early childhood literacy, which is always important, and as well as social and emotional learning. In addition, this superwoman or super lady is the founder of the Children's Book Marketing Company, where she leads a team that provides coaching and managed services to self-published children's book authors who want to take control of their branding, content, and marketing operations. This equips children's book authors to implement digital marketing strategies that connect with their ideal readers, activate systems that maximize royalties, and every book sold and optimize their distribution network. And what else does she do? Come on. You can't stop there. She also is the host of the Children's Book Marketing Podcast. The podcast makes marketing easier for children's book authors. She homeschools her 4-year-old son and resides in Atlanta, Georgia, home of the Georgia Bulldogs. So let's welcome for the first time, and hopefully not the last time, Micaela. How are you?
After that introduction, Dr. Vibe, I am exceptionally well tonight. Thank you. Thank you for
Great.
having me on your show. Thank you for that edifying explanation of all of the things that I do. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, right back at you, and we're very happy to have you. The family is very happy to have you and looking forward to an epic conversation with you. We just met recently a little while back, and I said, let's make this happen. So it's a beautiful thing, and I'm looking forward to getting educated, entertained, enriched, and enlightened. So all this responsibility, because you already do enough, so I just want to add some more things in your backpack, so to speak, that I know you're going to get it done. But what we do, as always with our friends for the first time, great bio, but let's learn a little background. Where did you grow up? A little bit of the journey before you became the superwoman you are, the super book
Oh,
author you are.
okay. Well, I am from a small town called Shaker Heights, Ohio. It is near Cleveland, and it's the kind of community where everybody pretty much knows everybody. The traditional path is pretty much what I took. Went to high school, graduated, went to college at The Ohio State University.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. The Ohio. Yes, I know about that. Even though I'm north of the border family, yes,
Yeah.
I know to regard it the Ohio State University. And if you don't say it to the Ohio State graduates, they give you cut eye and they correct you. It's like,
They,
your grammar school teacher.
yeah.
All right, go on.
Well, while I was there, I studied marketing because it very quickly pronounced itself as a much better career path for me than the one that I was admitted for, which was pharmacy.
Mm.
And I always wrote. I wrote, of course, lots of papers, but I did creative writing. I've always been a journaler. And I started to get really comfortable with marketing, communications, and strategy. So most of my career decisions were made to highlight or strengthen those in some way. From there, I worked for a couple of years, Went to graduate business school at Michigan State University.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second. You went to school at the enemy after. Okay, go on.
Well, this wasn't the bigger of the two enemies. The bigger enemy
Mhm.
of the Ohio State University is the University of Michigan.
Oh,
Michigan State's second. And
yeah, that's just right. State is second. That's true. The bigger foe is Michigan. So we won't talk about what happened this year in the football season. Go on.
oh, let's please not, because we were on an 11-year streak, and the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So that was how I was able to enjoy being in the full-time MBA program at Michigan State for 2 years.
Wonderful.
But beyond that, I did what was most expected: corporate marketing, worked for companies. The economy was crazy. I found entrepreneurial endeavors and side hustles to keep toward paying student loan debt, finally paid that off. And
I'm
well,
actually talking to someone that paid off their student loan debt.
yeah, they've been paying off
Wow.
now for about, it was 2013, I think it was. So
Wow.
yeah, it was 2013. 2013 was when that happened. Praise God for that. And when, opportunities arose to do things out of my creative space, whether it was consulting or whether it was related to real estate, which I really enjoyed a lot, well, I just found additional avenues to spend my time until I became a mom. I didn't have too much extra time after
Mm, mm.
that.
How did becoming a mom change your journey?
It elevated my journey, actually. It gave it more purpose. And when I found that there were certain privileges to motherhood, there were certain concessions I was no longer willing to make. For instance, I am not an early morning riser. And when I was nursing my son, which I did for 2.5 years, I would, while I was awake, read Facebook posts in a group that I belonged to for all these women who were doing the same thing. They were up trying to figure out how to put their babies back to sleep, same as me, 3 or 4 in the morning. And a lot of them would make comments and remarks about how frustrated they were that they had to get up and go to work in a few hours. And all of these creative ideas had come to me during the time that I was pregnant, that I was really eager to activate in some way when I finally became a mom. So I really struggled to understand why, with all that you are required to do as a mother, why there are decisions that you have to make that you're not going to feel good about.
Right.
And I extended my time off for maternity leave from whatever was normal, which I think is maybe 2 months to like 5 months, so I could really enjoy it and become immersed in it.
Right.
And when I went back to work, there was just no normalcy for me with the time that I really wanted to spend at home and the time that I was spending in the office. So I would breeze through my assignments in the office so I could hurry up and get home. And I cut my work schedule in half almost and decided that it just didn't really make sense for me to keep showing up in that way because there were other things that I really wanted to give myself permission to do. So I just did.
We'll talk about it now. I could save it till part of me says ask it now. So I'll ask it now since we're doing it in real time.
Okay.
There are a number of mothers who are going through what you just described. Any words of wisdom for them?
Oh, yes. Well, one thing that I try to be sensitive to is that there is one way of doing things that most people consider to be normal, traditional, common. And choosing to do things outside of that path
Mm,
is where I found a space that I can thrive. So I would encourage women who are considering how they might align their life differently to accommodate what is most important to them to do exactly that and make no apologies for it. Take every attempt that you can to accommodate for the lifestyle that you feel best suits you and your family. And don't make any apologies for it whatsoever. Some
Mm.
people feel like, I have to do things. Like, I have to put my child in daycare, I have to work. Well, that's not actually true. You have to provide care for your child in some way, and you have to generate revenue, whether or not you have a job or have a partner or somebody else in your place to help you provide that care. And it's a choice. It comes down to a choice of what you want more. Do you want more the comfort of the routine, or the satisfaction of knowing that you're living the life that feels best to you? Those are questions that I would encourage any woman to ask herself when she finds, not if, but when she finds that sense of self to be one that looks very different than it did before she became a mom.
Lovely. I'm sure you didn't expect to go down that route, but I thought it'd be good to.
I didn't, but I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
And I'm also aware that what I did is only unexpected to some people. Some people are intrigued by it. And I'm happy to share parts of that journey because it normalizes the decision that I made for someone who's looking for permission to do the same thing. And although they don't need permission from me or anybody else, other than the partner and the home that they maintain, agreement is more of what they need, not necessarily permission.
Mm. That's a quotable.
I might put that on a
Yeah.
notebook or
I
a
I
journal.
think I think that's really good. Actually, before we went live, I'm blessed to, like, word, mentor or provide thought process to many different people. And there's a young lady that I'm going to make sure that after we're done, she especially watches what you've just shared about, because she needs to hear that.
I hope she
So
does.
yeah, so I appreciate that. Getting back to, you were on your journey and all this stuff. When did the turn happen for you to write children's books?
Whew, the turn. The turn occurred around the time of my 40th birthday. So that's another pinnacle moment. I was turning 40 at the same time the world was going into sheltering in place.
Mm-hmm.
The week that I turned 40 was when the announcements were made in the United States that everything was being shut down until further notice.
Wow.
And at the same time that was happening, there were some critical situations that had occurred that rocked the nation in areas of political and
Yeah.
social unrest. And here I am in Atlanta, like everybody else, mostly getting the news about Ahmaud Arbery.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the incident occurred 2 or 3 hours from where I live, it wasn't publicized widely until a few months after it happened. So
Till
I'm
the
starting to
gentleman's
hear about
video came out.
it. Right. And at the same time, we're all mourning the loss of Breonna Taylor. And around that same time, another incident occurred near a rental property that I own here in Atlanta, about maybe 2 miles away at a Wendy's, where the gentleman who was unexpectedly a part of the incident that occurred there was a father. And because the renovation of the rental property had been ongoing for several months, and my son's dad had done a lot of the work at this property that was owned, it's still owned. The investment property hours that he was working would be like, okay, sometimes I'm stopping at the Wendy's on the way home. And
Mm-hmm.
he stopped at this Wendy's often.
Wow.
And it really struck me that this
Mm.
man couldn't make it home to his family. And you've got protests happening at this time. George Floyd happened at this time. And I'm here at home, the mom of a 3-year-old, wanting to do something. But short of going out into the melees that became of what was a peaceful protest in many cases, what could I do? And it was hard for me to figure out where my voice could live in the space of all of these things, because there's plenty to fight for, there's plenty to stand up for, there's plenty to say. But at what point would I start was kind of the challenge that I had been posed with. And I had been posed with this challenge because of a group of classmates of mine reconvening after conversations that we had previously, where we would just get together once a month to have conversations about things that were pertinent. And there were like 30 of us all together who accepted this challenge to do something in our respective communities differently, to infuse into our little parts of the world principles that we learned about tolerance and acceptance and managing race relations. And it was something that was very strongly emphasized in the community where we grew up. So what was starting to become discussion topics that people were opening dialogues about were the types of things that we were taught to confront and deal with from the time we were like 10 or 11 years old. And we carried that with us almost everywhere we went. So I'm trying to figure out, what can I do? And I saw this image of children one night when I was on Facebook that changed every thought in my mind about what schools were doing and who was impacted by decisions that were made for small children. And the images that I saw back to back were night and day. The first one was of children playing and having a really good time, and they were hugging on each other, loving on each other, just being jovial children of all ethnicities, every skin color, no question in their mind as to whether or not it was okay for them to do these things. And then the next image that I saw, after I'm convinced, this is what the world should look like, people getting along just because we're all human. The next image I see, there's a polarization of one group of children that seems to be ostracized for the rest of the room, and nobody in the room who's an adult sees anything wrong with this. And that's when it hit me that there would need to be something that I speak of from my position as a parent that helps to give other parents insight into how we can build systems in a world where our children look more like the individual children who were playing in the first image than the one where people would look like the children in the second image. And 2 days later, I got out of the shower, where I get all of my best ideas, Dr. Vibe, and I wrote a children's book series, actually, and the full marketing plan for it.
So my major mentor, he gets a lot of ideas in the shower, and to the point where he orders from Amazon waterproof sticky notes that you can actually, yes, you can get those that you can write notes and they don't like it, the ink doesn't it. Yes.
That's a thing.
So if you come up with these, because he mentioned this to me years ago,
Uh-huh.
and after we finish, I'll see if I can get you the link. But he has post-it notes that he can put up in the shower.
Do you see
Like
the
he'll
genuine
and he huh?
delight, the genuine delight on my face right now? I can't tell you how many times I have turned off the shower, grabbed the towel, run down the hall, went to my whiteboard or found a sticky note and had to get the idea out immediately. Are you telling me I don't have to do that anymore?
Well, see, save your time. Save your time. That's
I,
beautiful.
I could totally use that. Thank
So
you for letting me
you
know that even exists.
so from the time you came up with the idea in the shower till the series was finished, how much time was that?
About 45 minutes. Yeah.
How long did it take you to write it?
It took me 45 minutes to have the rhyme for my children's book manuscript, the first draft of it, along with the other three books in the series scripted, and what each of the outlets would be for each of the books, because each of the themes actually follows a much different concept, although it includes a series that follows one family. It it was a moment of brilliance. That's what I refer to those moments out of the shower. It was a moment of brilliance that hit like lightning sometime between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. on June 11th, 2020.
The dates noted, and man, you got the sticky notes in your brain.
I do. And I didn't expect that when I combined everything that had been circulating in the past week alone was pretty supercharged, but all of the events that culminated put me there.
Wow.
They put me there. And then, of course, because the manuscript was not perfect, I refined it,
Mm-hmm.
had it edited.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't because I just knew what to do with self publishing a book. I had to ask a friend who had already done it. Yeah, she had already
Smart
done it.
move. Yeah.
And because all of the writing that I've done, content creation in the sense that I'm usually building content is social media, press releases, blogs. I've written speeches. I've, of course, done lots and lots of
I may
presentations in
need
terms
I
of
may need to hire you to
marketing.
do a media kit for me.
That would be something I would actually enjoy because of what you do with all of the different avenues that you're involved with. That would be something that caters to the skill set that I developed as a marketer. So, of course, I could do that for you. Well, the thing is this, I hadn't published a book in a long time. The first book I published, I was in first or second grade.
But you had done it before though.
Yeah, I had done it before. In fact, I came in contact with that very book. The book that I published in second grade is one that I wrote about my grandfather,
Mm.
and he was moved here with my mom when she relocated from Ohio a couple of years ago. And before he passed, which occurred in 2019, when we cleaned out his room, he had the book that I had written for him when I was in first or second grade.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
couldn't believe it. I shared it with my son.
Wow.
It blew both our minds.
Wow.
And
That's a special moment. You'll never forget that.
I never will. I cried, of course.
Yeah.
Motherhood allows me to be as emotional as I could ever possibly be. And after he passed, and I was going through all of the photographs that he had that my grandmother and him had amassed over almost 45, 50 years of them being married, I had all of the photographs, all of the photo albums, and I found it again. And it was serendipitous now that I think about it, but that was the first time I published a book, and it happened to be about my grandfather, whereas the next time I published a book happened to be about inspired partially by him. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So w- how long it like you got the manuscript and all that stuff done? What was the next step?
So the next step was to contact my friend who had self published a book of her own inspired by her son.
Okay.
And basically, everything she explained to me sounded a lot like project management. which is something that I've done a lot of,
Sure.
considering I was a product manager in branding and in the space of B2B marketing. There's a ton of project management involved in that.
Hmm.
And when she started explaining it, I was like, oh, I could definitely do that. Thanks for letting me know. But I started also giving her ideas that she could use for the next book that she would release, which she told me was going to be later in the year. So we're in June of 2020. We're literally the second week of June. So if the idea hit me June 11th, I scheduled a conversation with her. That was a Thursday for that Sunday. And we're off to the races.
You bet.
And when she explained everything and started letting me know that she was planning to release a book, I asked her if it would be okay if I shared with her some suggestions about marketing that would
Right.
make her book release a success. And it wasn't like scripted, it was just off the top of my head, letting her know what I thought might be effective. And I thought that was that. I follow up with her to let her know what I decided to do with self publishing. And then we talk again in a few months. That's what I expected. But she sent me a text where she asked if I would provide her with some marketing assistance for her next book. And I didn't have any good reason to say no, but I couldn't immediately say yes because I was doing a lot of other stuff at the time. And I prayed about it, I thought about it, and here it is. I already have this marketing strategy that I could, in some ways, replicate or adapt so that it would fit her book. And it seemed like the direction that I was going in and the passion that I had for instituting these principles that exist in the theme of my children's book could be manifested in a much different way. Because ultimately, what I decided as a self published author is that my goal and my mission is to make books with characters who have African American heritage or African heritage to whatever extent are more visible, accessible, and available to a greater number of people. But it didn't for me mean that I needed to write 20 books.
No.
So for me, her asking gave me an opportunity to operate in my gift, something that I know I'm very well versed in is marketing, and help a lot of other people get the type of reach that they may not otherwise have the time to figure out how to do, or the resources, or even the interest in doing, because most of the people that I became to understand in the self-publishing world are not self-publishing books full time. So they're not
Right.
immersed in all aspects of what is involved in bringing that book to market. And when she asked me, I had to walk away from what I was doing prior to that and take on this new assignment, which turned into what you mentioned before, which is the consulting company and the podcast.
All right. How did it how did it feel to hold the first book completed in your hand? Look at the look on your face. Talk to you. Enjoy the moment.
Oh, it was exhilarating.
How so?
Well, the idea of the book all came together very quickly in my mind. But then there was this lull because self publishing a book that has illustrations
Hmm.
is not a quick process. The process of illustration can last anywhere between 3 to 6 months.
Yes, that's a long haul.
That is a long haul. So the buildup of anticipation behind this was approximately 6 to 9 months long, given the delays
Yes.
in printing, and
Hmm.
working with the printer overseas has its
Challenge.
usual
Yes.
expected challenges. But when
Yes.
you put COVID in the mix, not just the COVID implications of disruption to the supply chain and production, but also that my family got COVID the week that the books arrived.
Oh my goodness. Jeez.
That
What's next?
was the last straw, but I was able to receive a sample during that period of time that we were waiting for
Mhm,
the books. And when I had the sample in hand for the first time, of course, I'm looking at it to determine what changes and what updates should be made. But more
mhm.
than anything, it was the manifestation of something that's so much bigger than me. And to behold it was almost like an out of body experience because it was not through my own efforts that this book would even come about. Were it not for me becoming a parent, were it not for the Kickstarter support that was extended when I did the crowdfunding campaign, were it not
Oh,
for the type of father
so
that
you had to do crowd.
I did. Yeah, I chose to do crowdfunding.
Okay, okay.
Oh yeah, that didn't come up.
You like the steep hills, don't you?
They don't deter me whatsoever.
I gathered that from before we came on live. I gathered that. No worries.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, I did the crowdfunding, which was done in a most unconventional way, I might add.
What a surprise from you.
It could be expected. The whole time frame, like start to finish, was just affirming for me. And when the books finally arrived in totality, updated, as well as the other merchandise that supports the children's book and that complements the reading is of course writing, it was the complete package. It was a complete package. It shifted everything for me.
Why the title Little Mr. Fix-It's World?
Little Mr. Fix-It's World is a place where children are revered for simply existing. It's a place where children are invited to be an active part of their family
Mhm.
and celebrated for growing, learning, and taking life and all of its curiosities so lighthearted and with the innocence that children introduce. And the reason the name of the book is Little Mr. Fix It Assists with the to do list is because, quite simply, there is a to do list that was assigned by the mother of the house, and she's assigned it to the father who is happy to spend time with his son, giving his son the space and the freedom to participate by assisting gives him a greater sense of where he belongs in this family, which is a family of five.
Right.
But he's the youngest, and he's the youngest by quite a bit. And he's also one that most people might not expect to include. And at the time that this was written, what was happening in the world is that parents were, for the first time in many cases, staying home with their children. And
Okay.
the parents being accustomed to their routine and figuring out how to incorporate the needs of their children in conjunction with the needs of their now work from home lives was a very real phenomenon. So this was part of my way of giving parents the encouragement to include their kids more in some of the things that they're doing, to help them learn, of course, but also to understand more about what makes their parents who they are and what they do and how they do things. And I didn't have the experience of putting my child in the care of someone else while he was small, because the decisions were made that we were going to homeschool and accommodate each other's schedules to make that work. So I couldn't relate to whatever it looks like when you're so busy that you shoo the little ones away, or you're so preoccupied and you can't get it done easier if there's nobody at your heel, literally
Sure.
at your heel.
Sure.
But extending that extra grace to incorporate what their needs are and their curiosities is where I started my parenting journey, because I didn't have the encumbrances that would keep it from being possible. And I consider it a blessing, but I also know that there are a lot of parents who would like to do the same,
Right.
but the pace of life doesn't seem to make it possible.
So let me ask, how much of the content of the book is your own experience and also experiences of parents that you have had conversations with?
Good question. The parts of the book that stem from my own experience is almost like what I've observed from my son and his dad. Some of the illustrations were directly inspired by photographs or videos that I've taken of them doing their father son stuff, whether it's fixing the tricycle in the garage, as opposed to in the book, it's in the basement, or fixing the garbage disposal, which actually happened. They do that together. And the parts of this that were inspired directly from my experience were mainly from what I experienced with my grandfather.
Right.
So I was quite a tomboy when I was a kid, but I was always at my grandfather's thumb. If he was in the garage, I wanted to know what he was doing. If he was
Mm.
called to another person's house who was a church member who may be a widow, or if he was going someplace to fix something, I wanted to accompany him. And I was given that chance so many times. And a lot of the time he would go to the hardware store first before he could do one of the projects. And he was quite a master woodworker. So a lot of the things that he built were from scratch.
Wow.
Coincidentally, the
Wow.
same hardware store that we visited in my hometown shut down in 2020. They closed their doors after something like 65 years in business.
My goodness.
And there's an illustration in the book where the owner of the hardware store is using a photograph that was adapted thanks to one of my backers from the Kickstarter campaign. It was adapted from an image of my grandfather in 1977 or 78. He inspired that.
Mm.
Yeah,
Wow.
he inspired that.
You have in the book a lot of, and one of the bases of the book, and correct me if I'm wrong, or the book series is the interaction between father and son.
Mhm.
Why was it important for you to make sure you highlight that in your writing?
There, unfortunately, is not a tremendous amount of humanity extended to African American fathers, whether it's from the media, from the policing, systematic racism, and the biases that exist often paint fathers in such a negative light. And although there are some less than desirable family orientations where children are raised, there are also very loving homes that are led by men who are present, who are active, who are nurturing and compassionate, and very much the thing about the household that keeps it together. And I don't think a lot of men are recognized for the role that they play in fatherhood, especially when they should be in a positive light. So I wanted this also to be an opportunity to bring to visibility the reality that fatherhood matters, and that my fatherhood experience is so varied, where I was raised by more than one person. My grandfather and grandmother lived downstairs, so he was very present. My stepfather is the man who raised me. We lived upstairs. My biological father played a role in my upbringing more toward adulthood. And it sometimes takes a really capable father or father figure to help shape the development of a child. And I'm not saying there's anything to take away from motherhood, but I'm a boy mom looking at this loving connection between a father and a son. So that's the immediate response that I could give if I put pen to paper. What I see is what I can write. And sometimes when people ask me who are children's book authors, where should I start? You got to start with what you know.
Absolutely.
And that's what I know.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Great, great storytelling that you have. What was your son's reaction when you first gave him a book?
Oh my goodness. Even before I gave him the book, he had seen the illustrations
Right.
and he was very aware of what was happening as the illustrations were coming together. So the first impression that I received from him was one of my first reels on Instagram. I didn't really know what I was doing on Instagram at the time for
Hmm.
reels, but I had a video where I had a screen in front of me that had one of the illustrations of the main characters, both of them, the father and the son. And my son, whose name is Mason, looked at the screen and I asked him, Mason, who do you see? And he said, I see me. And I said, okay, Mason, well, who else do you see? And he says, I see my dad.
Nice.
And at that exact moment, I knew that my work was done, even if
Beautiful.
nobody ever bought the book, because the goal of helping little boys see a reflection of themselves on the cover and in the images and the illustrations was one thing that I wanted to transfer from my creativity and the illustrators into the readers. And when he told me that, I knew he got it. And at the time, he was about 3. So if a
Wow.
3-year-old could see it, I was certain that others in his peer group could recognize it as well. And it's written to make sure they understand how significant they are
Mhm.
enough to not only show up in the book, but also possibly one day create their own.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
He was actually also with me when the sample arrived. And when the sample arrived and we opened the package, we recorded that too. And he was so excited. He had all the oohs and ahs. He can read, and he's been able to read since he was 3. So he starts reading the book, and he's so amazed that he understands the difference between himself and the character, but
Mhm.
he understands also that the character was inspired by him and his dad. So now
Wow.
he's more convinced of the similarity between them. And that to me is golden because I can't think of one book when I was his age where I could have said the same.
What does Dad think about the book?
Oh man, he's so cool.
He's so, I love it. He's so cool. I
He,
love it.
he's so cool about it. He is, in his own way, excited,
Right.
but more than anything, I think it humbled him to
Mm,
know just how highly thought of he is as a father. Now, I've said it lots of times. I appreciate what you do. You're great, not just with Mason. He has two other children, and they're all at different stages in their lives where they're each 10 years apart. So he has to give something different to all of them. And it blows me away how he conducts and how he transfers the love for where he is today with each of them, with where they are today. And when he saw the book, he's not a super quiet person, but he did get emotional.
wonderful.
He did. He had a quiet moment of reflection.
Nice. Nice. One of the great supporters of the Dr. Vibe show, Macmillan Group, saying thanks for mentioning us Black fathers in such a positive light. I think there are many more. I think he left out maybe good Black fathers and not so good ones. So I think he just left that.
Yes.
So he appreciates that. So that's
Yes.
fantastic. Time
Thank
is flying
you.
here. So we need to talk about something else. We need to talk about this little thing, the children's book marketing company. How did that come
Oh,
about?
well.
You know, you don't have anything else to do.
Right. Who's got the time?
Yeah. Yeah. You know,
that that came about very soon after I started working as a freelance consultant, independent contractor for the friend of mine who asked for assistance.
hmm
So she asked for that in June of 2020. By August, I had a decision that had to be made as to how seriously I wanted to conduct myself in this space. And at the time, I was helping real estate agents with their marketing
Oh, you
because,
know, can I interrupt for a second?
yeah,
Do you give me permission? So let's cycle back to the beginning of our conversation and that message you gave for ladies about making a decision.
uh huh.
The lady that I referred to there, she does real estate marketing.
Wow, what a coincidence that
I
is.
may I may have to get you two on a call together.
That
There's
would be
that
awesome.
nothing just happens. Like I spoke to her a few minutes before we went live, and that's what she's doing. She's trying to push through to do real estate marketing. So this is nothing just happened. So continue.
Yeah, I can definitely help with where she's at right now because there's a lot of opportunity in that area because I had been a real estate agent for so long. And also because I had been an investor for so long, the courses that I wrote and the services that I provide were very distinct.
Hold on. You wrote courses.
Yeah, I say it so casually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had written some courses, and for continuing education in real estate, there aren't a lot of marketing courses that are taught. So the trajectory that I was on was more toward creating more courses, teaching
Right.
more of the CE courses, and
Yeah.
then building out my other coaching aspects through those programs. And it was my way of using so much of the experiences and the knowledge that I had amassed in real estate over the years, but it fit into my life today. So I was beyond that point where I wanted to work with buyers and sellers anymore. And I had to make the decision to decide, do I want to keep doing that because that has nothing to do with this? And the only bits and pieces that really got pulled in from real estate come into the story, actually, because part of the story of Little Mr. Fix It Assist with the To Do List lives in the space of home improvement. And because I invest in property and because we are fix it people here in this house and we're built from scratch, make from scratch, fix it kind of folks, there's a pride of home ownership that exists behind that. And so real estate came with me only to that minimal degree. And when I decided how I came upon this was that I had to make the distinction of whether helping more people who were going to empower someone to experience home ownership was more significant to me than helping to prepare the next generation of families to have conversations and open their minds to cultures and diversity beyond their own. And this is the one that won. The mission was heightened for me, and the timeliness of it couldn't be ignored. And it
Hmm.
was something that pressed on me in such a positive way that I looked forward to it, and that doing it wasn't a selfish gain simply because I have a ton of experience in that thing. It was a challenge for me because children's book publishing is very different from real estate transactions, where I could explain how it all goes fairly easily and how to get from point A to point Z in a transaction and all of the content that you need to put into the world to equip your clients and prospective clients to navigate that with you and to choose you. But in children's book marketing, that was another opportunity to do something awesome. And I wanted that.
Do,
That was how
do,
I shifted.
do you ever ha, I guess let me put that during the okay, you know what? Let me hold that off. What are some of the services that the marketing company offers and to whom?
Well, they're all two children's book authors.
Okay.
The children's book authors that I work with have either created a book already, it exists, it's been published, and marketing is not a strong suit for them. So they do not do as well with sales or visibility as they could if they had more systems in place, more strategies to help support them. So I provide coaching in that area. And for people who are interested in extending their reach, a very unique thing that I do is network with lots of podcasters because in our space, we come into contact with folks who are looking for new content and people to interview all the time. I match children's book authors to podcasts that they can appear on. That way, they're speaking to the right audience who would be their ideal reader without having to extend the necessary time and effort to build a huge following simply from social media all on their own. So being able to pair up the right people with the right podcasts is one of the other services that I offer in addition to the coaching. At
Hmm.
Dr. Vibe, I come into contact with a lot of people who know that they're not going to leave their full-time job for their children's book business. And that's
Sure.
okay,
Understood.
but they still want their messages out and they
Right.
still deserve to be heard and to have children observe these stories and to have these parents aware of the variety of issues is another way that helps me extend the thing that I wanted to do to begin with, which was to impact more families. So it works out well.
Nice.
Works out
Nice.
well. The podcast came up about the same time because I had this microphone.
We're just hanging around, right?
I had already started the podcast for the real estate marketing. And I was in a groove, but then this whole pivot occurred and I stopped podcasting for that genre of what I was doing, shifted, and all the energy and all the fuel behind me wanting to make sure children's book authors get more of what they need came through on the podcast. And when the podcast released, let's say I decided I'm going to write the book in June, open the doors with a few clients already in the month of August. Podcast launched in October. There was no turning back at that point. So now I'm here.
And you are here.
I'm so
You are
here.
here, and then some. You is here.
Ah, yeah, I am.
Was there any time in the journey so far you said, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore.
No,
Okay.
no. That is an easy, absolutely not. And the reason is because there's a community that exists where the work that's being done, most of it's being done by parents.
Yeah.
The work that's being done is introducing a new support system for parents to introduce to their children ideas and concepts that they're not comfortable with. Because these books are not just written for us. These books are written also for people who exist in other cultures, other
Got it.
ethnicities,
Got it.
people who are from other walks of life.
Mm-hmm.
And these books aren't just on the basis of cultural identity, but also touches on neurodivergence. Books for authors that I work with prepare children for different career paths. Books for authors that I work with introduce to children disabilities that they may not know anything about and may not have an easy way to have that conversation with a parent or with a teacher. And then they see it in a children's book and they see it illustrated and they can understand and comprehend it better. These are books about subjects that are not comfortable to explore, and they force parents to an extent to become more agile in what they communicate. And because they have the support of these illustrated picture books, they're able to help their children identify things that are right from things that are wrong. And I can't not make more books that have a place in the world that are so needed. Get to the points in non-traditional distribution systems where they need to go. These are the kind of books by authors who are intent on connecting with nonprofits whose missions are to elevate early literacy to some extent, but also they may be helping guide and mentor children through issues that they have with bullying or issues that they have with accepting themselves. These are authors who are committed to doing the hard work to go out into the community and schedule the school visits
Mm-hmm.
amid a worldwide pandemic. But they'll still do the virtual readings because they know that when children see them show up, that raises the stakes on what they feel is possible for themselves at some point. This is where the
Mm-hmm.
heart of it is for me. And I can't not show up for that. I can't.
Wow. Um, the books that you help authors market, are they for a wide audience or for a specific audience?
They're for a wide audience,
Okay.
but
And-
it
Go ahead.
depends on what the book is about. For
Okay.
instance, Little Mr. Fix It assists with the to do list is clearly in the space of father and son land. It's
Right.
never going to be marketed to, it's never going to be marketed with branding that would attempt to attract anybody who's not looking for blue, black, gray, red. It's not going to be pink to accommodate girl
Right.
moms and girl dads.
Right.
And so the storyline that exists there is very unique for parents who have boys, parents who are open to the possibilities of sharing it with their daughters because it's okay for daughters to see functional relationships between fathers and sons. But a book like the author who I was coaching earlier today, she has a book about Alzheimer's. And so the niche focus of her book is more around connecting with parents who are in the sandwich generation. They're Gen
Got it.
X. Gen Xers now have grandchildren and small children of their own in some cases, and they are responsible for the care provided to their baby boomer parents.
Right.
So if I'm attempting to reach out to people who are like blue collar, mechanic, individuals who care about home improvement, individuals who are working with the tools to do the job, she's never going to take an interest in that group of people any more than I would
Hmm.
parents who are considering whether to buy another home because they now need to house the grandparents in conjunction with the children that they have that are elementary age.
Got it.
So there's a breadth to an extent, but most of it is specialized in how the messaging will be, which isn't to alienate people who don't fit those constructs, but it's more so for the author to be in better control of their messaging and their marketing. And so the secondary or tertiary audience of readers that it falls on is like a bonus. It's like icing on the cake.
Sure.
But that direct connection with the primary ideal reader is who all the marketing is created for. And it's what helps authors to avoid expecting to be everywhere and to be all of the things to all of the people who could ever possibly want to read a children's book.
Nice. Do the majority of your authors that approach you, are they black?
Actually, no,
Okay.
it's a good balance.
Excellent.
And the balance is that if the person who reaches out to me is not Black,
Hmm.
but wants the services or the coaching that I provide, it's because they know they have a story that extends beyond the color line. So, like with someone who is, let me think of another client, with someone whose book is about hair and embracing your natural identity, that author is very different from an author who is going to, or that author's book is very different from an author's book where the story is about mindfulness and meditation,
Hmm.
but the need is still very much the same. How do I reach more people with this message that children need to hear about and that adults need assistance providing some guidance around? That's the same exact need. So there's really no limitation. The only restriction is perhaps because of the communities that I exist in, having people who are outside of the picture book genre. That's likely the person who's not going to call me. Somebody who has an early reader book, which might be an early chapter book for somebody who's age 10, 11, 12, depending on their reading level. And it's the type of book that might have a few pictures, but not a whole lot. It the breakage is more in the genre than in the ethnicity. Yeah.
So if I approached you and I said, "Hey, I want to write a children's book,"
Mhm.
give me two or three questions that you would ask me on our first conversation. Because what I'm doing is simulating so if people do want to contact, have their mindset right.
Yeah. The first thing I would want to know is who are you writing it for? I
Okay.
would want to know who you're writing it for because that would help me distinguish whether this is a part of something that lives in your heart, your purpose, your intentions, your mission, or if it's something that you want to check off of the bucket list.
Right.
Now, if it's a bucket list item, there's a disclaimer. And that this is way too much effort required if you just want it to be a hobby. Because the intensity that comes along with working in this space and the cost involved with self publishing a book may or may not be where you want to spend your time unless you want this to be a business. So that'd be the first thing I'd ask. Who are you writing it for? I would also ask, what would you ultimately like to see happen with this book?
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of different exit strategies. Exit strategies is probably a strong way to say it. Let's just refer to it as avenues. Where a children's book is concerned, it does not have to be limited in media only as a book, a physical book. It can extend into other spaces where that could be a short video.
Okay.
That could be a workshop
Mm-hmm.
or a series of programs that can foster the themes and the concepts in the book so that children and parents have a better experience going beyond the book. It could be in a screenplay. It
Wow.
could
Wow.
be,
Look, all these different opportunities. People who are listening here is there's so many different opportunities, not just a book.
yeah, it could be a cartoon series. It could be a Netflix show. It could be a line of toys for children. There are so many different things. And I ask this question because I want children's book authors, people who have not yet written the book and people who expect to write a book, to think more broadly about the potential for their children's book to become an ecosystem. And then the third thing I would ask is, what does your time frame look like? Because there's a realistic time frame to keep in mind, and there's the rush job. And because my brain and all of my training, all of my experiences is very process oriented, there is a sequence and there's a system.
Process.
Yes. And when people tell me that they're interested in getting to the finish line, but they're not that interested in running the second 200 meters of the mile, I know it's not going to be a good fit, because the kind of work that comes together when you're independently publishing requires you to trust the process.
You're reading my alleged mind. I was going to go there. I was going to say
Uh,
that.
you have to trust the process.
Okay. Well, you know what? We're going to end it there. But I have one more conversation piece.
Yes,
What is the
sir.
future for you and this vision and this journey and what's going on? What should we be looking for in the near future?
In the near future, little Mr. Fix-It assists with the to-do list will be in relationship with some of the national retail partners
Oh, wow.
that are in the home improvement space.
We'll leave it at that.
Yes. And the reason it's because not only did I intentionally
Yeah, I was
create
going to
that.
ask if that was intent. There was a see process.
Yes. When I first wrote the book in that 45-minute time span, when I had the book and the series and the marketing plan sketched out on a piece of notebook paper that I still have,
I believe it.
I put it in there because what I really want is for fathers and sons who shop at these places to immediately identify that there are people who they can relate to on a children's book. And whether
Right.
it ends up being with the book in the shelf in the stores or brand deals and sponsorship opportunities to more distinctly highlight the time spent together between fathers and sons, what I'm really angling for here is that presence for them to know it and see it. And that's the first thing that's up next for little Mr. Fix-It Assist with the to-do list. The other thing, because there's a line of stationery that exists for little Mr. Fix-It, in the cover on the book, he is holding a notepad. I don't know if you can see this. He's holding a notepad.
And notice, community family, that she has a copy of the book to show us. So do that, show proof.
He has a copy of his to-do notepad, and all of the items that are in the line of stationery are generated toward helping children to become confident with their writing skills. And in that regard, finding additional ways to help them exercise that skill through digital downloads and through resources that will help to continue to build their confidence in writing, but also teach them about tools, how to use them, identifying them, what their equivalent may be
Mhm.
for something that children can use on their level is what's next after that.
We stopping right now. All right. Putting the brakes on because I know there's even more than that, but I'm gonna stop right now because we're ready for the part two when that happens. When that's ready. Micaela, I'd like to say thank you for taking the time to share with us this evening. It was so worth it.
Oh,
And I
it's my
want to
pleasure.
wish you personally and professionally and your family blessings and favor past, present, and future.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you
Please
so
keep
much.
in touch with us. And folks, if you want to get in touch, let's start with there's the podcast,
Yes. The podcast.
there's the book. That's work. If you're living in the United States, you may see at a retailer that does home improvement sooner than you think. And then if you're interested in getting marketing to get your idea for children's books or children's ideas, that is the website address.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Oh, and can I throw this in also for your listeners, your
Throw,
viewers?
throw, throw, throw.
We have had an amazing conversation sharing and unveiling some of these things that exist in the space of the children's book, and I want to make it possible for your audience to have something that will help them to understand the concepts and get excited about sharing this with other people. So I have a special offer, if that's all right.
Talk. It's your show. I'm just steering the ship. You're driving it.
Well, when you have this in the notes, I would like to give you a link that your listeners and your viewers can go to if they are interested in purchasing the book. They can buy one and get one free. That
Oh,
way, they can gift it to someone
oh,
who is as
oh,
interested in this as they are.
oh. Okay, we gonna make that happen.
Yes.
Oh, well, thank you so much for thinking about my community.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. And this is such an opportunity to introduce it to not just one family, but share it with
That
someone else.
we have to have an offline conversation there. Maybe, yeah. There's a number. This you just set off like spinning wheels in my head with that thought.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about it. I'm
With
looking
we will
forward to
share
it.
about it. Well, look, we will be folks. You're not going to hear our offline conversation. By the way, I know you'd like to. You may see the potential results of it, but you're not going to hear it. Thank you so much. Be well, keep the faith, and remember to give yourself grace, you and your family. All right.
Thank you. You as well. It was such a pleasure spending this time with you. Thank you, Dr. Vibe.
My pleasure. Well, folks, another epic conversation. I'm telling you, children's books are so important, especially during the last 2 years. For those who may or may not know, I'm very passionate about helping fathers and dads and men move in a positive direction. And This is such an important subject, especially for dads. And one of the great ways for dads to get closer to their young people, especially the younger ones, is reading a book before they go to bed, or have the child read to the dad or the caregiver. Can't forget the caregivers. There's a lot of incredible caregivers out there. So excellent, excellent, excellent thing. So I like to say this was another epic conversation, folks. Love it. Love it. Like to thank everyone who watched this live or on the replay. It's appreciated, not taken for granted. Also, anyone's going to listen to the replay. If you want to get in touch with me, those are the details. Those are the deets. Website, the drvibeshow.com. Twitter at drvibeshow. The gram, or the Instagram, I should say, because people say gram, are you dealing drugs? Instagram, the drvibeshow, and email dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. Like to say this. I always end off my conversations like this. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions. Then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. And remember to give yourselves grace. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith. Walk good. And subscribe to the channel, especially on YouTube. So you, or on Facebook, but YouTube, Facebook, whatever. So you get notified when we have our next epic conversation. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith. Be good.